And one other thing I should bring up regarding this cover version is that the vibraphone in this was played by J. Peter Robinson, who also not only played piano and organs for the classic West End musical Jesus Christ Superstar by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice, as well as the aforementioned Mike Rutherford album Acting Very Strange, but he would soon go on to compose music scores for films such as The Wizard, Wayne's World, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Highlander 3, and even new music for the English version of Godzilla 2000. So quite the resume there. Side 2 begins with It Don't Matter to Me. Again, if it doesn't matter to you, why make a song about it to begin with? The song continues on the upbeat, optimistic, and brass-centric vibe established by some of the previous tracks. Mostly, I cannot believe it's true, and even ones from face value, such as I Missed Again, Thunder and Lightning, and the version of Genesis's Behind the Lines. As the title itself indicates, Phil sings ad nauseum about it not mattering to him what you may say or do, because he had seen and heard it all before and doesn't want to put up with it anymore. Not unlike I Don't Care Anymore, albeit in a more carefree and easygoing attitude, and less of one out of frustration. The Phoenix horns are just as vibrant here as they are in I Cannot Believe It's True. From the delightful opening to the very end where it kind of shifts key or transposes or modulates, if you will. Plus the bass here and in the next track are done by Mo Foster, who also worked with the likes of Ringo Starr, Cliff Richard, Jeff Beck, Van Morrison, Brian May, and even Heaven 17. This is another underrated track from Phil's solo work. Just simple, fun, and excellent stuff. Next is Through These Walls, with through spelt as THRU, because poor literacy is still cool. The song is definitely moody and atmospheric in both music and lyrics, yet it's pretty straightforward about it as well, being about a man secluded in a small room, listening through the walls around him and looking through the windows, essentially spying on anyone about. So, kind of like me in my room and my walls and window, the more I think about it. The music itself does fantastically well at setting the mood. Its minimalist nature is very similar to that in the Air Tonight, with a bit of Dodo / Lurker by Genesis and even Intruder by Peter Gabriel, which part of me feels like this is basically that. Phil's own attempt at doing a somewhat similar song about being inside a house in the dark, while being about a different theme altogether as well. Phil plays the keyboards and marimba on top of his usual vocals and drums, while Daryl Sturmer plays his usual classic guitar partway into the track itself. Like with Do You Know, Do You Care, I can easily see this being played as a Genesis song, with Tony Banks and Mike. In fact, I think songs like this might have left some influence on the Genesis Mama album, which would be released about a year after this album. And hopefully I do intend to review that by then next year. Then we have the soft rock ballad, Don't Let Him Steal Your Heart Away. Or as I might put it this way, Phil Collins trying to emulate Elton John. Not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing in of itself, but if you were to listen to the opening piano melody within the first 30 seconds of the track before Phil's vocals kick in, or even just listen to an instrumental version of this, either way, without any knowledge of who it's actually by, I wouldn't entirely blame you if you generally mistaken this for an obscure Elton John song from that very same period of the early 80s. 21 at 33, The Fox, Jump Up, and Too Low for Zero. In fact, the respective orchestral conductor and leader, Martin Ford and Gavin Wright, did contribute to Elton John's Jump Up album and Leather Jackets, Both albums I've already reviewed, so feel free to find and rewatch those if you get the time. But I digress. Throughout a good chunk of this album and the previous, Phil has sung about mostly either having to cope with his breakup or moving on to a new relationship, or even a combination thereof. This case, though, does seem to be a combination of such, with Phil becoming content with his former love interest being with someone new, while cautioning her to be careful with this one, to ensure that this person doesn't take advantage of her, or as Phil puts it, doesn't steal away her heart. So yeah, while this song is pretty standard, even for a Phil Collins solo song, it's still pretty sweet and sentimental. Don't let them steal this song away. After that is The West Side, an instrumental track not unlike Droned and Hand in Hand from Face Value. And like those two songs, this one is definitely among Phil's underrated material, combining elements of jazz with a bit of 80s synth, with Don Myrick of the Phoenix Horns playing that sassy saxophone once more. In a way, taking the role of lead singer in and of itself, with Daryl's guitar and the rest of the Phoenix Horns coming together as well. In fact, the only instance of any vocals in this is Phil singing Yeah over and over during certain bits here. The title itself, plus with the mood and style of the music itself, does seem to give off a bit of a New York City visual feel to it, kind of like a 1980s version of Lambs Lies Down on Broadway. I wouldn't even be surprised if this too had some form of influence on certain tracks like The Brazilian or Do the Neurotic. The West Side does indeed show influence of jazz within Phil's stuff and succeeds at demonstrating his adopting of such. And so our album ends with Why Can't It Wait Till Morning? Which is the kind of question that ends up on my mind at least once whenever I write, film, and edit these videos. Both Martin Ford and Gavin Wright both returned for this ballad. However, this time, no guitar from Daryl, no bass from John Giblin, no Phoenix horns, not even any drums or drum machines at all. Just Phil's vocals, the piano, and that symphonic orchestra. So very much similar to You Know What I Mean from Face Value, both of which seem to emulate a style similar to something Randy Newman would compose. Here, Phil asks us, well, why can't it wait till morning? Till daylight, till next time? Especially since he had a drink too many. And like I said already once, a right kerfuffle. For now, he just wants to continue laying in bed with his love interest and not even think about whatever may have happened before or whatever would happen afterwards. It's about wishing to prolong the inevitable, to not worry about any past hassles, and just live now and rest easy. It's quite honestly a good enough track to close out an album like this on. And with that, how this album is pretty much decent. While whether this or Face Value is the better of the two albums, I'll leave that to you. But I really enjoy both albums just as equally well. Like with Face Value, nearly every song here is a highlight, really showing off Phil's skills, not just in drumming and singing, but also playing with synths and a few other instruments as well. So, knowing all that, this definitely does feel more like a solo album in a way than even Face Value. The production is exquisite, and the moods of the songs here range from moody to being intense to upbeat and cheerful and all that. Yet it still manages to be generally personal and sincere nonetheless. Say what you may about Collins himself and some of the directions he may have taken, he has had musical talent and has shown such quite well, I think. So if you're into soft rock, neo-funk, or even a bit of blue-eyed soul, I really kind of recommend this. But to those who have listened to the soul album before, what do you think? Do you think this stands out among Phil Collins' other work? Or do you prefer another album of his like Face Value or No Jacket Required? Or just even prefer his contributions to Genesis? Feel free to give your thoughts down below in the comments. Next time, Remembrance Day's around the corner as well. And I guess it's here where I go again on my own.